This segment is sponsored by Dennis Goins of DennisGoins.com. I'm back with financial advisor, Mr. Dennis Goins of Dennis Goins and Associates. And today we're going to be talking about why you should talk about money before and after marriage. This conversation is so important. So, Mr. Goins, why is this conversation about talking about money before and after marriage important, and why should we have it before marriage?
Well, good morning, Lady Charmaine. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You know, last week, a week before, on our previous segment, we talked about who controls the money, the husband or the wife. Today, we're going to talk about talking about money before and after you're married. Pretty much what we call financial infidelity. No money secret should stand between you and your spouse. And that's very important today because a lot of couples, one of the major reasons why they don't make it is because they can't agree on finances and money. And it starts before you're married, and it continues even after you're married. And basically, you should not hide your debt, your income, or assets from your spouse because obviously it can lead to fights and significant problems in the relationship. And communication and transparency are very, very important when it comes to money in a relationship. There was a study done by the National Credit Counseling Foundation regarding engaged individuals preparing to get married. And 7% of them thought that if they discussed money issues with their fiancé, that would prompt a fight. And that's very interesting. And 11% of those felt that such talks would uncover financial secrets. Mm-hmm. And 5% said that it would cause us to call off the wedding. Now, these are engaged individuals as far as the study that was done by the National Credit Counseling Foundation. So you can see there is trouble brewing for engaged individuals before they get married. And you see that can really stem and be the resultant of the problems with finances being one of the number one causes of breakup in marriage. What do you think about that?
So when should this conversation take place in a relationship? Should they have this financial conversation when they talk about possibly getting married? How should they bring up the topic of money and how they handle money in your credit report? When is a good time to discuss it?
Well, again, that should be an ongoing part of the relationship before you get married. I mean, when you start talking about getting married, I mean, that's one of the things you need to bring up. Hey, I've got this debt. Because once you get married, this debt that you had before marriage becomes a problem, not necessarily legally, but from an emotional standpoint for your new spouse. I mean, if you bring new debt into the marriage, then obviously that's going to impact the family's finances. So you should talk about this initially when you're discussing getting married. And not only for married individuals that are cohabitating, they basically should also be concerned about the debt of their partner because it really impacts the relationship and it causes a problem. One of the things that I found, I counsel a lot of my single clients on investments and finances, and when they develop and want to get married, that's one of the things that I refer and talk to them about. Because when I first started 25 years ago, I had a client who felt that his 401k was his money. Well, once you get married, technically, you can't move that money in that retirement plan unless your new spouse agrees upon that. Well, needless to say, he had a big problem with that, and that relationship didn't make it, I think, about 3 or 4 months after that because that individual didn't know that. And that's one of the things that individuals need to talk about before they get married is the impact. I mean, I suggest and I advise my clients to talk to an attorney. I mean, particularly if you live in a community property state such as California, there's a lot of implications that could happen if you're not aware of how the law works as far as your debts and your finances and your assets. So very important thing that you should start before you get married so you at least know what the situation is.
Now, you also talk about a no married couple should suffer financial infidelity. What is financial infidelity?
Well, financial infidelity is when you don't disclose to your spouses what your financial situation is. I mean, if you've got an IRS tax lien, if you've got a judgment, you got a large amount of credit card bills, and the spouse never knows about it until you get married, then that's pretty much keeping things from them. That's what we call infidelity. You knew that it was there, but as the study showed in 2013 from the National Credit Counseling Foundation, people want to hide that. They don't feel comfortable in talking about that. And obviously, once you get into the relationship, it really causes a problem. Because if you basically are talking about sharing expenses, well, you can't share if a lot of your finances are going to pay off previous debts. So obviously that becomes that lack of being upfront about it is what we call financial infidelity, because you kind of hid that from your spouse before you guys get married.
You also talk about you have to tell your future spouse about your debts. I remember when my aunt got married when I was younger, and her first year filing taxes with her husband, she was really excited because she was getting this tax refund, and it was going to be a pretty large tax refund. I remember she was crying, and I found out that her check was garnished because her husband had owed back child support. Have you heard many of these stories? And he didn't tell her about the back child support.
Well, let me first say, that's one of the things I really impress on everyone. That legal question can converse with an attorney that specializes in those type of litigation issues, because, again, it depends on the state you live in as far as of how and what encumbrance you would have. But in that particular situation, if you're coming into a marriage for the most part, and you have an IRS lien, then basically you're not necessarily, liable for that debt. But anything after you get married, then it becomes your encumbrance there. So you have to be very careful to know that, because it's what we call an innocent taxpayer situation. But those issues need to be talked about with an attorney before you get into that situation. And you can imagine your relative was very upset when she got into that situation, and it impacted for an IRS tax lien and garnishment. The garnishment was a result and after she was married, the taxes that accrued after she got married. But the one before she got married shouldn't have been a liable situation. But you have to be careful, depending on the state you live in, when you get married, and how it impacts your assets, and how it impacts the complications of appreciation. And a lot of people don't know that. I mean, I found that people that get married and come in with both their houses and whatever, and they think after they get married that that's still separate property. It is, but there's a little quirk in the law that they need to talk to an attorney about as far as some of the appreciation and in that property. So all those issues, need to be discussed, and you need to understand that up front before you get into that situation, because if you find about it after the fact, then it could be an impact on the relationship. Of course, we don't marry for money, but it's good to know all the ins and outs. And if you don't know that and become surprised about that, it can really have an impact on the relationship, which is, again, why one of the top reasons of broken marriages is financial issues.
And another topic, too, student loans. When you don't make your spouse aware of your student loans, and you're in default, and then you go to file for your taxes, the same thing can happen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything that's encumbered when you're messing with the IRS or the government, that can impact that individual spouse's future income. That they can put a lien, and that can impact that. So one of the things you've got to be, you've got to be able, once you come together, obviously there needs to be a plan to pay it off. I mean, obviously, if you get into a situation and the income is not equal, then you at least, even though it's another spouse's debt, then I think you need to make a plan, come up with a plan on how do we, basically retire that debt, even though the non-liable spouse makes more money. Well, they might want to share into that to help that individual pay it off. And once they know up front the situation, it's easy to come up with that. And as the song says, you got to compromise. You got to compromise in a marriage situation. And it's okay to go into a situation, and if you know up front that, hey, I've got these bills or I've got this lien, because it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep.
Mm-hmm.
If you make $1 million and you're spending $1 million, then you're just as you're not as any better off than anybody that makes $20,000 or $30,000 a year and doesn't spend that much. So it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep in all situations. So you've got to basically work on that and make that a part of your financial plan. And one of the reasons and one of the ways to solve that is, as I mentioned, compromise on that. But being upfront about it, don't let it become a situation you get you get a lien or you get a garnishment and on that and find out, well, hey, this is a situation that happened. You got to come up front with that and plan for that for the future. And you got to basically work together to build retirement savings and an emergency fund together. This is a plan together, doing things together. If I know or the individual knows what's going on, then they can deal with that. But if they don't know, if it's help from them, then obviously it can be a frustrating situation. And wait on big purchases. I mean, sometimes some people like to buy shoes and cars and whatever, and they like to buy Mercedes and have a Mercedes car, but they only have a McDonald's income, so you can't. That doesn't work. And you got to have a budget. 2 plus 2 still equals 4, and like I said, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep, and that is very important. And finally, taxes. You got to watch your taxes. The IRS does not play. They can come anywhere and get any money. And so you got to plan for that. And one of the things you mentioned that I found too about refunds. A refund is okay, but if you work with your W-4, you want to basically balance it out where there isn't necessarily a refund, because the only thing you're doing, you're letting the IRS hold on to your money until April 15th of the following year. Well, you might want to use that money to help you pay off that debt instead of having them to withhold so much out of your paycheck. You got to watch that. You got to calculate that. Work with a tax professional to decide how much should be on my W-4 as far as my withholding. Because if you're in debt and you're paying interest, but the IRS is holding on to your money and not paying you interest, then you could have used that extra money that you got to take home to pay off that debt, and not have a refund, but at least you don't have to pay all that interest on those credit cards. And if you're a 1099 employee, you definitely have to be careful, because you have to remember to send in your quarterly withholdings, because you want to have it April 15th to have this big tax bill and get behind. So all that is important. All that is definitely vital as far as, before and after you get married. And because once you are married, and that becomes basically a debt that both of you guys may have to be resulting in. So you got to talk about it. As I said, you got to communicate. It's all about communication. It's all about compromise, because you're in this together. And full disclosure leads to significant clarity in our financial lives.
Well, that was some really good information, Mr. Goins. If people wanted to reach you, where can they find you?
Again, people can reach me at dennisgoins.com. That's my email address. They can also connect with me on LinkedIn at Dennis Goins and Associates. Also, I have a page on Facebook, Dennis Goins and Associates. And I give a lot of information on my website about some of the issues we talk about today and in the future weeks. And it's very important to know. And it's what you don't know that really will hurt you.
Now, that's a good way to end off. Thank you so much. You always give great information. And we just want to let everybody know, make sure you check out Dennis Goins here on Lady Charmaine Live every Friday at 10:30. You don't want to miss it. Thank you so much, Mr. Goins.
Thank you very much, Laura Charmaine.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to learn more about financial investments, contact Dennis Goins at dennisgoins.com.